Hi, welcome back to Interesting and Sexy, a podcast dedicated to spreading the awareness and visibility of intersex people, as well as discussing issues/experiences about queer life, being different, and all other things interesting and sexy. Today is something a little bit different. I'm having my first endosex guest on. And if you don't know what endosex means, it's the opposite to intersex. So I'm having someone who isn't intersex being interviewed today. And that was the plan from this podcast from the very inception, was to have mostly intersex people, but I also wanted to have other people in the LGBTQIA plus community. I know that not all intersex people identify with the LGBTQIA plus community, but as I have said a lot of the time, the issues of gender identity, sexuality, these are often overlapping areas for both communities, and just being a marginalized group. So I absolutely identify with this community, and a lot of other intersex people do as well. So that is why I'm going to have this podcast be not entirely just intersex people, but also other people in the community. Today's guest is Ray, and they are the curator for the LGBT queer LGBTQ Instagram page. So I've worked with them before, and they basically dedicate their platform to uplifting people in the community's voices and messages. And they're really super huge. They've got millions and millions of followers. So they're doing great work in uplifting people that need a little bit of extra support. So we're going to be talking to the media curator today, and it's a really great episode. And I hope you all enjoy it. And thank you very much. Like I always say, the best way you can support this show is to leave a comment, to share it around, to like, to subscribe. And also, if you would like to donate to this show, there is a donation link down in the description below. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce you to Ray, and let's jump into it. Hi, Ray. Welcome to the show. Thank you very much for coming on.
It's a pleasure. Thank you for having me. How are you?
I'm doing really well. It's nice to see your face again.
Nice to see yours too.
How's everything in Ireland?
Everything's going pretty good. I just got off of my first celebration with my family in my new apartment. Feeling good, settling in, excited to be back in my home country.
Nice. And is it getting really cold there?
Yep.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Typical. I mean, it's Ireland.
But I've lived in California for 9 years, so I'm pretty decent. Like, I have built up an expectation for warmth, and now I'm here, so anything would be cold to me, truly.
Yeah, I suppose so. Yeah, so is California just always sunny pretty much?
Literally, you don't have to think about the weather. Like, there's a thing about, in Ireland, everyone is constantly thinking and talking about the weather. But in California, it's like something you don't even think about. You just walk out the door. I'm sure it's actually not dissimilar to Australia.
No, it's not like that here. So where I live in Melbourne, like I guess in some parts of Australia it would be like that, but even Sydney, Melbourne, especially Melbourne, the weather is just notoriously hot and cold. And I mean that in it's 4 seasons in one day. That's what everyone says. So you'll wake up, it's nice and sunny. You're like, oh, don't need a coat today. And then halfway through the day, it's pouring rain, freezing cold. And then it gets hot again later in the day. And it's just, yeah. And Melbourne is pretty much always cold.
I heard traditionally that folks in Australia, like that Indigenous folks in Australia have like 8 seasons, like traditionally.
Oh,
that it's
really?
Like the typical 4, but there's like 8 seasons throughout the year.
Oh my God.
Like
okay, yeah, that would make a lot of sense. I mean, depending where you are in the country, because I mean, in some parts of Australia, there's like basically no season. It's just always dry. It's desert. And then in the northern part of Australia, there's 2 seasons. There's wet season and dry season. So that's really all they have going.
You can't put these girls into these boxes. We need to expand from the seasonal boxes,
Yeah, exactly.
We should break the traditional seasonal norms.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Seasons are next.
Yeah.
Okay. So before we delve into your story and everything like that, my first question is always, can you tell us a little bit about yourself? Who is Ray? What is Ray about? And how do you identify?
Big question. Ray is Irish. Ray is married. Ray is queer with a capital Q.
Yes.
And Ray spends all of his time on the internet, chronic internet user, unfortunately, especially because it's become my job. And so I spend all my time just, on my phone, for better or for worse, trying to turn my horrendous addiction into something that actually might do some good in the world.
Yeah. If only everyone had that like objective to turn their addiction into something productive or positive, at least. Like,
it's more common than you'd think.
Yeah. And you are actually the first endosex person that I'm having on the podcast, and endosex, for anyone watching, is the opposite to intersex. And yeah, so you are the first person. Like, this podcast has always been like about intersex people, but also about the queer community in general. And I thought you were honestly the perfect endosex person to have as the first, because I feel like you do so much good for the LGBTQI plus community, and that's a community that is like very important to me. And yeah, I'm really glad with all of the work that you're doing. And do you kind of just want to give a little lowdown on what that work is for everyone who might not be familiar?
Sure. I'm adding perfect endosex person to my bio because that's from you.
Yes, okay, that's a direct quote. Take it.
Yeah. So I work on the Instagrams at LGBT, at LGBTQ, and at Pride. A few others that were certainly currently pending, but across the internet. And I'm sort of the content curator, creative director, sort of person wearing all hats there. And really, how I see my role on those pages is just the person who press send on the content that other people want amplified. That's really how I see myself, as a vessel to pass through and share and amplify other people's messages. And every so often, I'll come in there and I'll say, hey, there's something that I think, needs to be amplified that people aren't talking about, or maybe not talking about enough. But for the most part, I think that the pages are at their best and functioning at their best when I have as light a touch as possible. If I have any influence, it's to make sure that people who don't look like me get a lot of say on the pages, because what I found is, and I've worked in queer media for quite a while, since 2017. I've been working in queer media. I've been working in social media since 2014, full time, like as an employee. But I've been sort of raised on social media since 2007, 2006, 2005. I was watching YouTube on 2005, like OG YouTube. Like that. I've been in the game for a long time. But yeah, the way I see it is, my story has been told 100,000 times, and it's old news. And so the way I see it is, let's pass the story on, pass the torch on to other people. And that's really what I have. The less I see of myself, the happier I am. But I do want people to know that it's me there.
Yeah.
There is transparency. So any opportunity I can to show my face, like today.
Yay. Yeah. And I think it is, even though your story has, been told, it's still an important story, and it's still important for people to see that represented. I mean, everybody needs to feel represented, and it's incredible that you are doing a job where you have the capability to uplift pretty much anyone that needs it. But yes, your story is still very important.
Thank you. You know, it's like, I think it's sort of like a unique situation where, you know, I spend most of my time on other parts of the job. Sort of what I spend most of my time on is working on coursework, to like educate people on using the internet and growing their pages on the internet, and then also queer issues. Um, that's where the money comes in, and then the pages are sort of a means to an end. They're sort of a byproduct of that. They're just a great way for me to like, hey, we have these assets and we're able to operate without having to like, you know, completely trash them with horrific content. And so and the way I see it is that like, so long as queer voices are being funneled through there unfiltered, that's the way I want it to be. And so it's a unique opportunity that we're in right now, and I'm taking advantage of it as much as possible.
Yeah. Nice. And do you want to go into like, because you've kind of briefly told me before, everyone, we've met before, by the way, and we've kind of gotten to know each other, but I really liked the story of how you found yourself in this role and how you got to where you are now in your journey.
Yeah. So
In
if
the
we
work
like,
side of things.
yeah, if we rewind the clock back to like 2005, when I first started watching YouTube, not to make it a really long story, but it really does sort of start there. I was spending like literally all of my time doing YouTube, but at the time, YouTube wasn't like a career, you know, it wasn't something, the internet wasn't a career, influencers weren't a thing. There was nothing like that. It was just a hobby, that I happened to be spending all of my time on. And um, I went to college for forensics, of all things.
Whoa.
Yep. Completely different to what I thought I would do. And it turns out, you know, not so good when it comes to math and chemistry. And
Right.
maybe I'd watched a couple too many CSI episodes and thought I could wear the lab coat and do the thing. And nope, not me. So
Yeah.
I was pivoting to journalism and
Yeah.
languages and things like that because I guess I'm a more people person than I thought I was. And it was around that time that YouTube really started picking up, and I was like realizing that this is sort of an area that I could spend more of my time on. And that's when I met my husband. Um, at the time, I was fully in the closet. Um, yeah. And I had told myself when I was maybe 15, 13, 14, 15, sort of really settling into the idea, yep, I'm queer. That's without a doubt. I told myself I'm not going to come out of the closet until I have a boyfriend.
Yeah.
Because if you remember, I mean, it's still a thing, but it was really a thing then. When you came out, people were like, are you sure? You know, how do you know if you haven't, you know, all of that
Yeah.
kind of thing. So
Yeah.
it's like, I'm going to avoid that, bypass that, and not going to come out. I'm going to just say, I have a boyfriend. Like, I'm going to be the change I want to see in the world, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
So I waited until that happened. And when I met Brett, that's my husband's name. Yeah, I just told everyone Brett's my boyfriend and he happens to live in Los Angeles and he's a YouTuber. And those were three pretty big bombshells at the
Yeah.
time. You know, my ma had already had one son with a long distance relationship. And when I came out to her, she said to me, just so long as he doesn't live in another country. That's all she said.
Oh no.
Coming out as long distance was tougher on my mother than coming out as queer. Um, which was unfortunately devastating for her
Oh.
because 3 years later, I mean, after many immigration woes, including raising $10,000 on a GoFundMe campaign, not GoFundMe, Indiegogo campaign, um, to pay for the legal fees, and then Doma getting struck down, like all of this coincided at the same time, and got incredibly lucky, because then I was able to apply for a fiance visa and became, if the immigration expert that we spoke to is to be believed, the third same-sex fiance visa case. Yeah. So felt pretty
Whoa.
special. We jumped in it right away. Um,
Whoa.
yeah. So we were pretty quick about it. We'd been waiting for like 2 years to make it happen. So
Yeah.
so that happened, and that's when the opportunity to start working in digital media like really became a thing, because
Yeah.
the digital media jobs in Ireland in 2012 were slim pickings.
Uh-huh.
uh
Uh-huh.
2013, 2014. And so I started working in digital media. I started running social media accounts and growing audiences.
Mm-hmm.
And then in 2017, a job at Out Magazine came up,
Mm-hmm.
and I jumped at it and grabbed it with both hands, because the opportunity to work in a all queer space was
Mm-hmm.
like mind blowing. What blows my
Mm-hmm.
mind about Out and The Advocate is that those places have been running. The Out for 25 years when I started working at it, and The Advocate for 50 years. Like, that blew my
Mm-hmm.
mind, that like there were
Mm-hmm.
places where queer people were working for
Yeah.
that long, since before I was born. Like, those people are the real trailblazers in queer media, and I was
Yeah.
so excited to be working with them. And we started to see the ways in which you're working at a magazine, um, when print media is really experiencing a huge change. And I was seeing the way that print media was sort of struggling to adapt to social media.
Mm-hmm.
um, and around 2018, my boss at the time left. And then a few months later, when all of his work got piled onto me, I had a little teeny tiny nervous breakdown and left too. And then he was like, listen, I'm starting this whole media empire with these pages, and I need someone to do the grunt work.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
I once again jumped in it with both hands,
Yeah.
and just really reinvented the whole idea, and decided that. And I credit this to my good friend. His name is Lucky. um incredible social media mind. I had a long conversation with him about it. And he told me that the truth is that social media is about community. That's what it's
Mm-hmm.
about.
Mm-hmm.
That's what it should be about.
Yeah.
um, and that's what it had been before money got involved. And how do we really really strip away all of the nonsense and focus on that? And how do we really pull away all of this sort of you know these hoity-toity ideas of becoming some hotshot important person, and
Mm-hmm.
really get to the core message and build community around one another? And to me, that was really about throwing, tearing down walls for people to access the page as easily as possible,
Yeah.
with only a little bit. The only thing that I look at when people send me content is Instagram going to take it down, because at the end of the day, we're on their platform. Is TikTok going to take it down? And then, is the content queer?
Yeah.
Those are the two questions.
Yeah.
And if they pass that test, then they go up.
Yeah.
So that's what happened. That's the whole that's the whole very long, apologies for you in the editing room, story.
No, no, please. Like the longer the better. Like I want to hear the full story. I want all the details. So yeah, thank you for sharing it with me. And yeah, so the fact that you just have those two simple rules is really powerful, because people in this community do need that little bit of extra help to get their voices heard to a wider community, and sometimes to be taken as seriously. And so you're really doing a very good job at
Oh, thanks.
pushing people out there.
But
And
I can always do better. And I encourage people to let me know.
yes. Okay. Anyone listening? Anyone in the community listening that needs a platform? you know where to find Ray. And I know that there's a lot of intersectionality within the community, which I can imagine can be a whole whirlwind to navigate and everything like that. So how do you navigate it and embrace it and make sure that everything is going the way that you feel it should go?
Yeah, I mean, the way I see it is, I have a lot of trusted friends who sort of work in queer media, and I rely on their guidance quite a lot. So folks like Blair Imani, folks like Skylar Balar, folks like Alok, a lot of people in those spaces whose guidance I rely upon and who I look to as sort of, trailblazers in the space. So that's number one. But I also have my own internal clock, my own internal sort of guidance. And once again, it's like I've been in this sort of queer media space, not a hugely long time. Like I said, The Advocate and Out Magazine have been around for decades. So, I really am a blip, but I have been on the digital space for a long time. And I've seen the stories getting told, and I've seen the reactions to it as well. So I very closely read the comments, watch the responses, to see what people are saying. And I know when people are saying, hey, this is the first time I've seen myself featured. That's when I'm doing something right. And so when you shared some of your videos just a few weeks ago, I saw plenty of those, and I also saw a lot of people who were saying, I have never heard of this before. Once again, you're doing it right, because it's sort of interesting. I think there's this constant, idea that we need to march forward and progress. And once we've hit a topic, I've explained the intro to intersex once. That's it, done. I can move on and go to more complicated things, and that's it. But I've realized that the internet is actually sort of a lot more cyclical than that. And new audiences are coming in, and new people are coming in, and people are growing up, and people are aging out of it, and sometimes algorithms just don't serve things to you at that time for whatever reason. And so you have to really get comfortable with telling stories again, but differently, through various different perspectives, as many perspectives as possible. Because that's when you know that you're going to hit something, you're going to hit a chord or a nerve. And I really, really felt that, I've told and I've spoken to intersex folks quite a lot. And when I saw your story, when you came onto the pages and you told it in such a different way, in such an impactful way, that was so incredibly inspiring to me, because I was like, oh my God, you can actually reinvigorate a whole group of people about something that you thought you had, gone over again and again and again, and that they just weren't listening to. And so that has actually reignited my whole idea of what it is to, educate on social media. And so again, I look to the people who are trailblazing, people such as yourself. So very grateful.
No, I'm really, really grateful. That video was, I found that my way of explaining it wasn't my first time explaining the story in short form content. Like, I have done it a few times. This was probably every single Intersex Awareness Day, I've kind of gotten a bit better and a bit more thorough with it. And now, especially with that one where I have like a couple on my different channels that have blown up a little bit, but this specific one where I'm just explaining intersex bare minimum, like, this is what intersex is, and I'm like really breaking it down. I'm just like, hey, so it's like this and this, and then this is what it means. And I felt like breaking it down in such a simplistic way. Like, I feel like even the inflections in my voice, like I'm really just like Okay, let's discuss this. I
Yeah.
feel like that really worked with a lot of people because, and it's like you said, it's cyclical, and people miss things, and like you said, you can explain the same topic in different ways, and it's going to reach new people, or someone who may have even seen something before is going to be like, oh, I get it now. And a lot of the comments that I've been getting on these videos, it's like, oh, okay, I understand what intersex is now. And I'm like,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. It's like there's like a real fatigue that comes with educating online on social.
Yeah.
Um, you go through periods, or advocacy as well. You just go through periods of like, what am I doing? Like,
Mm-hmm.
am I reaching anybody?
Yeah.
Like, am I just like masochistic and just want the negative attention because I get constant, death threats or whatever else, like negative comments, like
Yeah.
what am I doing this for? And then
Mm-hmm.
it's moments like that that
Mm-hmm.
really make me real. And even though they come with, the negative as well as the positive, I
Mm-hmm.
really, really, really try to focus on, the positive, and it's young queer folks,
Mm-hmm.
seeing themselves in it, or seeing, more to the community than they had previously thought was there,
Mm-hmm.
or it's their parents that
Yeah.
seeing these videos. It's my parents seeing those videos, you
Yeah.
know, and coming to me then after and being like, I saw that video and da 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 da. These are things that I've spoken to them about countless
Yeah.
times,
Yeah.
and it's just in the exact right way. And I think that's really what comes down to it. It's finding the right way to tell these stories and present these ideas to
Mm-hmm.
people so that it clicks.
Mm-hmm.
And it really, really, really is possible. And I'm keeping this in my mind for the next time that I enter another like another downturn where I'm like, what does it all mean?
Yeah.
Am I affecting any change in the world? Uh,
Yes.
to remind myself that even though it's very difficult to measure beyond the ridiculous numbers that social media gives you, there is change. There are real messages. There are real people behind those screens, and,
Mm-hmm.
and you don't know, just how greatly you might impact their life. And so
Mm-hmm.
I hope some of the folks who saw your video will go on to continue
Mm-hmm.
that passion and that drive, and do
Yeah.
incredible things.
Yeah.
Because I have seen intersex folks affect real change in the world, like
Mm-hmm.
putting pressure on hospitals to end, genital
Oh yeah.
mutilation,
Yeah.
like that's some real shit. Sorry if I
Yeah.
can't curse here, but
No,
that
you
is some
can
real
go
powerful
for
shit.
it. Yeah.
I've seen it, and so it's possible. And so let's keep doing it,
Yeah.
let's give it to them every which way
Mhm.
we can, because it's important.
Yeah. Yeah. And like you touching on there are real people behind these screens is something that I kind of just have to remind myself, because there are so many beautiful comments, and maybe not everybody is a commenter, so for some people it takes a lot to leave a comment, and there is, as much as there is some pretty questionable, borderline horrific stuff that you can receive online, there is that just pure that there's more of the pure love and curiosity and wanting to learn and positive, but because the negative is so very loud, it can be like very overwhelming. But then you just have to remember, I was like, oh, more than the people that are commenting the negative, it takes a lot for people to say something loving and to
Hmm.
really put their heart into it, where the people who are saying the negative stuff, I feel like it's less important. I don't know, because they're
Yeah.
just shouting into the abyss.
Right. Right. Absolutely. And barely even thinking about what they're saying,
Yeah.
or and the harm that it's doing. It
Mm-hmm.
doesn't make it any better.
Mm-hmm.
But it's comforting to know that when you get a positive message, it's sincere,
Yeah. Yeah,
and
exactly.
it's meaningful.
Yeah.
Um, And so it's really difficult, because for every one positive comment, um, the three negative comments really weigh heavily on you, and have maybe as much of a negative. I have really learned to tune it out. I think, and I thank TikTok for that,
Mm-hmm.
because
Mm-hmm.
the negativity on TikTok has been an incredible learning lesson.
Oh
You end up
yeah.
one wrong algorithm, and you better set up shop, get comfortable, because you're there
Yeah, I know.
forever. um, so, but like I said, I've been on the internet for a long time, and I've watched people comment on my body, on my sexuality, on my voice, on my relationships,
Mm-hmm.
on my very existence, my
Mm-hmm.
ideas. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
everything. And,
Mm-hmm.
as far as I'm concerned, my ideas are fair game because I can stand by them.
Mm-hmm.
But, when the attacks become more personal, it's difficult.
Mm-hmm.
But I think, and what I'm starting to learn, I moved back to Ireland last year. It was actually earlier this year, but it will almost be last year.
Mm-hmm.
At the beginning of this year. And part of that decision, obviously, was because I wanted to move closer to family, but also I wanted to kind of experience living in a small community again. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and having direct access to small community life. And this is
Mm-hmm.
just a tidbit of maybe not wisdom, because I'm still actively pursuing this.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But what I'm trying to do is, when I enter those periods of questioning, what is it all like? What is it that I'm doing? Does it have any impact on the world? I put down my phone and I tell myself, get out, get outside,
Mm-hmm.
go go
Mm-hmm.
talk to people in your community.
Oh yeah.
Because if you don't, you are having an impact online. But if you don't think you're having an impact online, or you don't feel like you're having an impact online, you will find that in your local community. And if
Yeah.
that's just like literally, this sounds so ridiculous, but if you are literally just wearing like a pride pin, where is it? Like a pride pin,
Yeah.
and walking out in your local store,
Yeah.
um, and a kid at the cash register says to you, I love your pin.
Mm.
That is the positive feedback that like
Yeah.
sticks with me for years, for years. I remember when I
Mm-hmm.
was back 3 years ago, I was in a summer camp in Mukwonago with my husband, who was working there at the time in Wisconsin.
Mm-hmm.
And I was, it's Mukwonago, Wisconsin. Wisconsin. It's in the middle of nowhere.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
and so probably a very red area.
Yeah.
Probably not very queer friendly, but I'm just living my life. I don't even really think about it. I'm spending most of my time at a summer camp and on my computer, and then every so often I go to the CVS, that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Um, and so I'm wearing like my pride hat and my like trans pride hoodie,
Mm-hmm.
um, and a pair of pajama bottoms, doing like a late night CVS run.
Yeah.
And a kid there was like, clearly very nervous and acting, really nervous around me, and then
Mm-hmm.
really wanted to say something. And then we ended up talking for like 20 minutes, just
Wow.
about the community and about what it's like being there. And,
Yeah.
it was kind of this eye-opening experience that like, wow, I worry about what kind of impact I can have in the world. Just being visibly queer is enough.
Mm. Mm-hmm.
just,
Mm-hmm.
just going out into your community queer
Yeah.
has an impact on the world.
Yeah.
Um, and I really, really, really recommend that if it's safe for you to do so, and you are down in the dumps trying to make an impact,
Yeah.
do something in your local community that
Yeah.
will leave even a teeny impact, because you don't know who might see it and who might benefit from that.
Mm-hmm. That's really powerful advice. Yeah.
Thanks. I have my moments.
Yeah. I'm also interested to ask you about what being queer in Ireland was like in
Mhm.
the early 2000s.
Yeah. So I was born in 1990. So
Yeah.
I
Oh,
am
okay.
smack dab in the middle of the millennial,
Mm-hmm.
the millennial, unfortunately, chronically millennial.
Mm-hmm.
Uh,
Mm-hmm.
but yeah, so I was, 10 in the year 2000, and I was, 18 in 2018. So, between those years, early 2000s, was when I was coming to understand my sexuality. And it was also a really interesting time in Ireland to be doing that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Small town, 1,000 people, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
It was village, actually.
Mm-hmm.
100 people in my class. Not my
Wow.
class, my school. My school.
Oh.
Excuse me. My whole school, 111, I believe. 15 to 20 people in my class. 15
Yeah.
graduated, I think.
Mm-hmm.
So small, 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 small. And countryside,
Mm.
so it always amuses me to think about this. In like American movies, you have like the jocks, and you have the cheerleaders, and you
Yeah.
have the nerds, and you have the da, da, da. In Ireland, in the countryside, when I was growing up, you did not have that.
Yeah.
You had the girls.
Yeah.
The girls didn't even get to have their cliques. It was girl. And then the
Yeah.
boys were divided into sports
Yeah.
and cars / farming.
Oh, okay.
That was it. Farming is a clique, apparently. Uh,
Okay.
and if you existed outside of that spectrum, you were bizarre, and you were sort of sidelined. And
Uh,
obviously, being the very stereotypical queer that I am, not very much into cars and sports.
mm-hmm.
So it wasn't easy. And I did have to see kind of a lot of, a lot of queer phobia in my community that was
Mm-hmm.
impacting me in ways I didn't even really understand at the
Mm-hmm.
time.
Mm-hmm.
I remember my religion teacher in secondary school, um, / English teacher, because they had to do double duty at that school,
Yeah, I'm
um,
sure.
um, arguing that same-sex marriage was a sin, in class, in public school. I remember at the time there was like a queer couple that moved into town, and I really hope I'm not misremembering this, because you know how life, sometimes you have this story in your mind, but
Mm-hmm.
this is how I remember it. A queer
Yeah.
couple moved into town, set up a local restaurant, and they were actually bringing food to the school for like kids to get for lunch.
Mm.
And their car got vandalized. People put like
Fuck.
orange cones around their car, vandalized their windows, threw stones through their windows, and they got chased out of town. They left.
Oh
It
my
was
God.
it was really bad. And it was sort of in that moment that I was like, because I had no intentions of ever leaving
Mm.
my village, and very few people did. It was like
Yeah.
sort of unthinkable. It was the middle of nowhere in Ireland. And it was all I knew, and I was very satisfied. But it was really around that moment that I was like, oh my God, like I actually can't live here. Like I
Yeah. Yeah.
physically, it would be unsafe for me to live here in my hometown.
God.
So it was in that moment that I was like, I'm probably going to have to leave at some point. It's not a
Mm.
matter of if, it's a matter of when.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and so, yeah, I mean, it was Ireland in the late 2000s, still sort of in the grips of Catholic influence. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
sure, funnily enough, I left in 2014. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and then, like the next year, Ireland became the first country ever to legalize same-sex marriage by like popular vote. Popular vote did it. So the second I left, they were like, "He's gone. We can we can drop the act. We're actually really queer friendly."
What?
I think it was a sort of this like this moment, and I'm not a theologian, I'm not a scholar by any means, but to me, sort of like from the perspective of a queer person, living in Ireland around that time, it felt like at the time that Ireland's relationship with the Catholic Church was becoming increasingly strained. And there
Mm.
was an increasing level of distrust between the Irish people and the Catholic Church. And you have to
Mm.
remember that Ireland was basically run by the Catholic Church
Yeah.
for decades, for
Yeah.
decades. And when I say run, I mean that very literally. It
Yeah.
was the police and the Catholic Church that were running the country, basically. Um, and so, when that started to fall apart, anything sort of became possible. And I think that's when Irish people started to realize, oh my God, we're actually kind of an incredibly radical country of leftists. It turns out.
Mm.
Maybe I'm being a little bit too hopeful there. That we certainly have our have our nationalist horrific people here, but
Yeah.
um, but yeah, now things have sort of gone a complete 180. But at the time, it was definitely a very oppressive place to live as a queer person,
Mm.
because any queer people that were around me, and there certainly were them, and
Mhm.
as a little queer baby, you recognize yourself in them in ways, again, you
Mhm.
literally don't understand. Like, you
Mhm.
meet someone and you have a kinship with them, but you don't know why, and you can see that they're being ostracized by their
Mhm.
community, and that people are sort of whispering around them and talking about them, and sort of, well, he's got such and such a inclination, or he's such a type of person.
Mhm.
You
Mhm.
hear the dog whistles and you internalize them, and you start to speak a different language of secrecy, and
Mhm.
it starts to become normal until all of a sudden, in my case, you move to Los Angeles, start
Mhm.
working in a queer company with all queer people, and then you can't even imagine being around straight people anymore.
Yeah.
Really, the culture shock is like in reverse, is very real.
Uh-huh. Yeah. Oh my God. Yeah. I can imagine it just being complete polar opposite. So it must have been like coming home to this completely new place. You're like, oh, now I'm home.
Mhm. Yeah, it really was. I mean, it it feels almost like a trick. Um, like, it feels like
Mm.
a, wait, could I have done this the whole time? Like, was everyone just pretending? Like, it really felt,
Yeah.
going back, and just kind of, it did feel sort of overnight. Things changed and attitudes changed, and your high school bullies your secondary school bullies, in my case, are
Yeah.
messaging you on Facebook, saying, I'm so sorry for X, Y, and Z. And not everyone gets that. I'm
Yeah.
very lucky to have had that, um,
Uh-huh.
I think. But yeah, like, attitudes very, very, like, clearly, in measurable ways, went the exact polar opposite.
Wow.
I think there's a really interesting case study to be made by looking at queer identity in this country.
Yeah, absolutely. What would you say to these people? Because I feel the people who bully, I mean, a lot of the time, the people who bully are actually queer themselves, and that's why they bully. Like, let's just say that first of all. But some people just are afraid of what they don't understand, and a lot of people, I feel I get this comment quite a lot. Why do you have to like make such a big deal about it? Why is there so many letters in this community? Why is it so important? What would you just say to somebody who doesn't understand the importance of the community, and why is it important that we like identify with this community?
You know, my answer would probably depend on how well I know this person, but I've learned through many years of having this conversation, both in on the internet and in real life and in my head in the shower.
Mm-hmm.
The more personal I can make it, the better,
Yeah.
because it really paints a picture for them,
Mm-hmm.
actual impact. Like, I can throw around words like, representation and visibility, and all of that kind of stuff, which is very true, very real, and makes for very quotable content. But when it comes to people, especially people whose queer education is virtually non-existent,
Mm-hmm.
that really just telling your own personal story is the most impactful way to move forward. And so when I speak to people, especially in real life, about this, I tell them things like I told you about my upbringing, about seeing these horrible things and what they do to my psyche. I
Mm-hmm.
tell them about, I want you to imagine, just for a moment, every night every night until you were like 17, you prayed and prayed and prayed to wake up a different person every night, like fully a different person. You truly wrestled with the idea, because this is a Catholic upbringing, with the idea that you would live an eternity in hell and being tortured. Like this was a reality to me because that's the way it was taught to me. Not because my parents taught me this. It was my community. It was parish, the priest, who was telling me this. It was my English teacher who was telling me this. Community. And, you know, it was queer people living openly who made me realize that I had a chance at life, like a possibility to just live a life where I can eat, drink, live in shelter, have friends and community, and have some joy, you know, some minor joy. It's not very much that most queer people are asking for. Really, genuinely, queer people aren't asking for, you know, some sort of personal parade everywhere they go. Pride parades are really just about equity, about making sure that queer people feel seen and making sure queer kids, especially, see themselves before someone else has had the chance to tear that out of them, and make them think that they are less than. And so I really, really try to impress upon the people who say these things to me that I'm a human being. I am just as deserving of a good life as you are. And you are deserving of that. We are all deserving of a good life. And what a good life means to me is simple pleasures, comfort, and seeing myself every now and again, and being people who I can relate to. And that's what queer advocacy does for me. And I think that's, when you boil it down, it has the potential to do for everyone. And so I think that's what I would say, if I was approached with that question.
Great answer. How do you envision a better world for our community, and what would that look like?
I have touched upon this a little bit already, because it's really something that I'm trying to envision. You know, the internet. I am very passionate about queer advocacy online because I know it's important, but I really, really, really want to explore how we can use this incredible gift of online queer advocacy to facilitate boots on the ground change, you know, actual momentum in real life instead of just sort of endless scrolling. And that's even, especially now, you know, it's so true watching like earnest activism online in all different areas, whether it's queer activism or activism for Palestine and any of those issues that are incredibly important to be active online, finding ways to also do this in person is so important. And so for me, the future is finding a way to translate that to real life community. And so that is like myself and you talking right now and finding ways to connect, finding ways to make change interpersonally, you know, supporting one another, meeting people online. But I met my husband online. You can meet real life chosen family online. You can meet those people. So actively pursue it. Obviously, be careful because the internet is not always a safe place, but you can meet people online who you, with your combined efforts, you can make actual change. And so really think about that, how, especially locally, you can impact your community, and how you can use the internet as a sort of a tool to help you with that, but it's a means to an end. It's not the be all and end all, because at the end of the day, in your local community, that's where you're going to have the biggest impact. And so I really want people to think about that, how they can make change locally.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Before we end, is there anything else you want to add? Is there something you really want to bring home? And then also, where can everyone find you?
Yeah. So what I really want to bring home is, if you're queer and your message is not being told and you feel like you're not being heard, please reach out to me. Like I said, compliant with the terms of service of the platform that we're on, and queer. That's my those are my rules. But besides that, if you have a message and you need to tell it, please reach out to me. And I amplify it in whatever way that you feel comfortable. So for me, and Bloom, you know this as well. To me, it's, if that is just resharing a story, I'm not here to lift content, do anything like that. I'm just a vessel. Reshare, repost, whatever it is, I will find a way to make it happen. And then other than that, if you have anything locally going on, please let me know, because those are the things I really, really want to amplify, and try to reach the people who are going to have the biggest impact on that. So those are the things I want to drive home. And then besides that, you can find me. I am Rainbow with a Y, RAYNBOW, absolutely everywhere. That's my personal account. And then other than that, you can just look me up on @LGBT, @LGBTQ, and @Pride. DM us there. You'll find us. And yeah, thank you for having me.
Thank you so much. It's been really beautiful having you here, and everything you said has just really resonated with me, and I'm so excited for everyone to listen to it.
Yeah, let's talk more. Let's do more cool stuff.
Yes, I can't wait.
Thanks.